Good morning and welcome to the program, the only way to start your day. Good morning, Kenya. My name is Samuel Njoroge, and you're right in time for Eye on Politics. We did tell you that we'll be having this discussion at exactly this hour, and that is precisely what we'd like to start right about now. Welcome to the program. Hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter, 22162, that's the SMS line. Contribute to this topic this morning. My resident panelists are with me in studio. James Mamboleo to my extreme left. How are you, sir?
I'm good indeed.
You're doing great.
Amazing.
Oh,
thank you.
Perfect. And to my immediate left, I've got Milly Lwanga. How are you?
In the pact.
Feel like we should do a handshake.
You know.
Yes.
But quite an interesting time for this nation. And I would like to get your reaction on this very matter. What's your take on what happened at Harambee House on Friday last week? What do you have to say about it? Any questions you've got, kindly forward them to the avenues that we earlier highlighted, and we'll be more than glad to handle them on your behalf. We left this place on Monday. We talked about petitions, and we schooled Kenyans legally. So, Mamboleo, thank you so much. You've been receiving a lot of congratulations and thanks for your lecture in law, sorry.
I'm not being paid fees.
No, don't worry. In kind, though. In kind.
I appreciate it.
Let's talk about the pact. Come Friday, it happened, the handshake.
Yes.
And everyone says we've been looking forward to this. A lot of mixed reactions. I don't know what your reactions are. Let me begin with you, Milly.
I think that it is a good thing. I think from August last year, people have been calling for dialogue. People have been saying people should talk. We have analyzed who are the hardliners in each side of the divide. We have at one point stated as a nation that we want Uhuru and Raila to talk, the two of them, forget everyone else, and talk. And many other times when people have even said, can Uhuru pick up the phone and just call his brother? Because he is the one with the instruments of power, so he should be the bigger man and call his brother and talk. So I think that the calls, including by religious or faith-based leaders, wananchi, civil society organizations, all actors, including our friends from outside the country, finally culminated into something. We saw the two gentlemen that we wanted to talk so much, shake hands and come out and say they'd been in a 2-hour discussion, which is a plus. I think that where people are still questioning is the fact that we are used to talks happening in a certain way. We are used to having discussions, that there are discussions going on, that who is there, so that we can analyze who are the people bringing the two sides together, who are the key players, and already begin to see who is emerging, as the kingmaker come 2022. But we were denied that opportunity to do this analysis. So we suddenly have what we wanted, but we didn't get it the way we had anticipated it would come, or rather it didn't take that route. And therefore, you find that people are still questioning. You don't know whether to be happy or not be happy, because you didn't have the opportunity to see who was completely behind it, so that you know who is going to be broking what, and to what extent some of the things that we have been calling for as a nation are going to be able to come to the table. We know, for example, that there are the 4 items that the Jubilee government has been very keen on. We know, for example, that there are certain things that NASA has been calling for, electoral reforms being one of them, strengthening the judiciary being the other. So we anticipate, we'd want to see how this emerged, the softer issues versus the harder issues as the talks progress.
As the talks progress. Mamboleo, what's your take on the pact?
Well, first and foremost, to congratulate the two excellencies, the President of the Republic of Kenya and His Excellency, the People's President, Raila Odinga, for that very important handshake. What do I make of that? First and foremost, I think that is one of the most intricate chess or political chess that we have witnessed. Now, there's something that Kenyans need to notice, that after every highly contested electoral cycle, the emotions run extremely high. One side is not talking to the other. In most cases, they are talking at each other. But somewhere thereafter, there's definitely going to always be a truce. Why? Because the nature of political mobilization that you see across the board during the contests ends, and you know, when all the chips are down, the leaders will sit down and ask themselves, really, what are we going to do with each of the sides that we have brought this far? I see a president, I see Uhuru Kenyatta now as a man who looks back and asks himself the important question: will I go down into history as the president under whose watch this nation disintegrated? Or even if it did not disintegrate, what do I achieve by running such a polarized nation? Will I achieve the legacy that I'm looking for? And I think wise counsel has told him that, you know, you're better off probably conceding ground to Raila Odinga in some way without necessarily affecting the fundamentals, which means you will remain president, of course, and of course you have already formed government, but just bring a few of what he has to say about the Kenyan nation on board and try and work with him. On the other hand, there is a man in the name and style of Raila Odinga who has fought for great things in this country, and he has gotten to that point where he is just about to retire, and he's asking himself, am I going to be this fellow who is going to be remembered only for intransigence, you know? Am I going to be this guy who will go down in history fighting? And as some people say, he's gotten down to the realization that he might actually not become president of the Republic of Kenya. Well, that is not completely out of the cards, but the chances of Raila becoming president become slimmer and slimmer every day. So I see a meeting of two important legacies. One who wants to consolidate the gains that he has made as a fighter for democracy and go down with a fairly good name. I'm sure Raila Odinga wants to be remembered fondly when he retires or exits from politics. But at the same time, you have a president who has a country to run, and he has his sight on a legacy post-2022, and he wants to ask himself, will I achieve it with my brother Raila Odinga fighting me so hard? So why don't I incorporate his views in the running of government and make it better? But most importantly, which is the lesson that Kenyans need to learn, is that there is no political season that should see Kenyans die, that we should see Kenyans go at each other the way we normally go at each other, because if all it takes is for Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta to sit at a table and then say, you know, this is now over.
For 2 hours.
This is over, you know, then so that you now see fellows from both sides of the divide now saying, you know, I saw posts on Facebook, somebody who I know is a very ardent supporter of Raila Odinga saying that now, you know, Uhuru Kenyatta is my president. I recognize him. But most importantly, Sam, there is the question of the other people that seemingly were left out of these discussions. And that is, I think, where the most discussion is going to be. That NASA has 3 other principals who only watched the happenstances at the foot of Harambee House from the comfort of their living rooms on TV screens, and they were wondering what Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta were up to. There are those who say, those who are in the know, I don't know a lot, that they feel like Raila Odinga has beaten them yet again to the house on the hill for negotiations. Why? Because I am told, reliably so, that they had also started getting enthused to a discussion of that nature. And then just before they can say dialogue, somebody is already openly dialoguing ahead of them.
10 steps ahead.
10 steps ahead. So that is going to be the nucleus around which the political discussion going forward. Because, you know, Uhuru, as he keeps saying, is already doing his second term. The 2022 discussion is already beginning in earnest. And I don't know how this is going to sit with the three principles vis-a-vis the other principal, William Ruto.
If I may, Sam.
Yes, kindly, Milly.
Just to add on to something that Mamboleo has brought to the fore, that is very important. Why institutions must remain professional. When institutions appear to be taking political sides, yet politics can change in a matter of 2 hours. We saw, for example, the police brutality that was talked about across the country and outside by partners outside the country, saying that that brutality need not have been displayed in the circumstances in which they were. When institutions decide to take political agendas, we saw instances where things that would be ordinarily allowed, like somebody coming back to the country and people meeting them or welcoming them, being made into big things where people's lives were either destroyed or taken away or lost. It's unfortunate. And hopefully, if nobody else learns from this lesson, because they say that we have a short memory as Kenyans, if nobody else does, I hope the institutions in this country learn that they just need to do what they're expected to do and not take sides or be seen to lean towards any agenda.
I'd like to, bring forth memory in relation to this discussion. Sometime last year, shortly before the nominations, and there was this whole question whether NASA is going into the nominations as ODM, ANC, and there was that whole discussion happening.
Yes.
And I remember on this very set we said, as soon as the elections are over, and in the event Raila does not win, this outfit called NASA will otherwise turn into a very amorphous outfit politically. Today we expect what is being called a make or break meeting amongst the NASA principals.
I thought it's already broken.
But really, we're giving them the benefit of doubt and time because they said, let's wait for Monday.
Yes.
We'll have a meeting on Monday to chart the way forward. But really, what options do the other three have other than to eat humble pie and follow with a bandwagon, Mamboleo?
Sam, I have said in this set ad nauseum that if I were Raila Odinga, I would stop picking the calls of Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, and one quintessential coward called Kalonzo Musyoka.
Okay.
You know that Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, and Kalonzo Musyoka would have amounted politically into nothing if Raila Odinga did not pick their hands and walk them through the complex meshwork that is the Kenyan political system. And on several times he said that he smells he smells some betrayal from these people. That, I have lifted you up, made you something, and now you want to go and negotiate with my friends or with my enemies on issues that you would otherwise not have been able to negotiate upon if it weren't for me. So the meeting that you saw at Harambee House is just a culmination of very interesting thinking in which Uhuru Kenyatta is saying, Raila Odinga, you are my elder brother. Your father before you worked with my father, and they delivered independence and freedom for this nation. And then along the way, there have come other players like us. We need to leave this country united the way we found it. It would be extremely wrong that during our time, we are going to see the disintegration of a country whose forefathers fought so hard to make sure that we get it. Now, what I see happening is this. These three principles, especially NASA, In fact, I really don't have to say so much about His Excellency, the Deputy President, William Ruto. The persons that you are going to have to look at very keenly are going to be these three fellows in the name of Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Wetangula, and Kalonzo Musyoka. As we speak, that fact of Raila extending a handshake to his brother Uhuru Kenyatta has sent them to political oblivion. And the meeting they are going to have today, if it happens, is only going to be a kiss of death for the NASA coalition, because they will go in there with tempers flaring, but tempers flaring for no reason, because in my view, politically speaking, Musalia Mudavadi was not contributing anything to Raila Odinga's presidency. Why? Or quest for presidency. Why? Because Raila Odinga seems to have Western on his own. The other day when Kalonzo Musyoka refused to go for the oathing ceremony at Uhuru Park, people in Ukambani did not want to see him. In fact, he became a very threatened species in his own turf. Then there is, of course, Moses Wetangula, who amounts to nothing politically, if you ask me. He's just a joyrider. I think he was just looking for a way of retaining his seat as senator and majority and minority leader at the Senate. So Raila Odinga has decided that, you see, I am working with a team of people who, while they can benefit from associating with me, if I am going down, they will not want to go down with me. They would run fast and make a deal with my enemies while I sit here and watch. So why don't I just shut them off? But the most interesting thing, Sam, is, you know, I've kept telling him, don't pick their calls. But I think he was even more clever. Do you know what he told them? Wait, I'm going to call you on a Nigerian line. Put off your phones. I'm going to call you on a Nigerian line. That is political genius. Because how are they going to receive those calls anyway, regardless of whether it is a Nigerian line, an American or Canadian line, or even a line from Terra del Fuego? They were not going to receive any call. So I think this last week, I have laughed the hardest. I have seen three musketeers, you know, seated somewhere, waiting for a call, and all their lines are off. That is political. that is political. What can I call it? Is a circus, if you ask me.
But honestly, now it seems like there comes a new political order that one has to be recognized and respected across the board, courtesy of the status that the nation has been in for quite some time now. It brings forth a few issues on board that need to be looked at, and we were told not to speculate. There'll be a team that will be formed, and these issues will be looked at. However, what should be our expectations in as far as this team, these issues are concerned, Milly?
Yes, I think that one of the key things, the important thing with the two key leaders coming together and saying that they had these agenda items and the number of people coming from each side who will come and talk about this. Looking at the document that they signed, we have seen some of the things that they've outlined. I know, for example, that funds had been returned, that had been allocated towards police reform, because of the fact that for all these years, reforms did not seem to amount to anything, taking into account the way they were acting. I think that Matiang'i should be a very concerned man right now, because his agenda should be to get the entire internal security organs in a certain direction. And we saw that is one of the key things that has been highlighted in that pact. I think Chebukati and Chilobe should be very concerned people right now.
Not Chilobai.
Chilobai. Should be very concerned people right now.
Yeah.
Because if they have not already started, if they have started, then that is well and good. But if they have not already started the reform agenda towards electoral reform, that's something else. I noted that the speech that was made by the minority leader at the Bunge's meeting in Mombasa talked about the need for reform, both constitutional reform and legislative reform. And I saw that the electoral reform they're talking about is not just institutional. That's why I'm saying that it may save the institution for now, but they're talking about also representation of the people, need to reform that. And we've had discussions as a nation as to, you know, any time that Raila, the master stroke player, has been able to bring in a team that excites the nation, it's because he brings a team of people together. Remember when NARC was NAK, then it became NARC. It was because more people were brought in, so people feel more included even at that level when they see key representations. So it has been stated that it may be important for Kenyans to see possibility of housing more people at the top level so that then they will feel more included. I anticipate this may be some of the electoral reform that we'll have, not forgetting the institutional and not forgetting that we want a system that will be put in place that will ensure that the popular person gets the day. Right. It's not about playing karata, you know, it's about creating that hype and then working hard to ensure that that hype translates into numbers. So these are some of the things that we anticipate that will be discussed in a systematic and sober manner, in a manner that is realistic to the financial situation that the country finds itself in. Therefore, maybe NASA may need to tone down on or come down on the fact that we are supposed to have elections. According to the general, it's in April. According to discussions beforehand was in August. We may need to look at that. They may need to agree, the teams that come together, and see when realistically we can have these reforms in place and then go into an election that is proper, that actually shows people the results that is anticipated. As this go on, I think that just as Mamboleo had already stated, we are going to see, and we did also talk about it a bit last week, we are going to see emergence of certain people. NASA as a base remains. I think that it remains. What the people wanted, what the people anticipate still remains. And I think that this week, Raila Odinga has got a lot of work together with his lieutenants to tell people and show people exactly how that base remains strong within the pact. But remember that there are certain people who may not be the principals within NASA that have already been emerging as leaders, the brave leaders that the young, because majority of Kenyans are young, that the young people want to see as their leaders. We have seen Charity Ngilu standing very firm, for example, where she is. We have often said that she has 22 lives, if not more. Yeah. You never know. This may be yet another rebirth for people like her. We have seen people like Haniri and the senator from Western coming up very strongly in the last couple of months from the fiasco of 30th January, in as far as the core principles agenda is concerned. They have been doing this, and we anticipate that more and more of this is going to emerge as we watch. So I think it's interesting times ahead as we see who is being built and who is being totally, completely, and utterly destroyed in that agenda. For example, the politicians who make the only thing they know is to make their name by insults and by degrading of the key leaders in the country. What will the agenda be?
Really, that's a very important question, Mamboleo, because since Friday, we've seen the emergence of new talking points.
Yes.
I saw Moses Kuria saying he needs to be forgiven for anyone he has offended. And he's seeking forgiveness from them. I saw Duale say that he's worked with Raila and he knows how nationalistic he is. And he will put the interest of the nation before anything else. I've seen Murkomen say things that you never expected him to say. With this at play, Mamboleo, will this be a gain some, lose some kind of situation? And who are the likely people to be, you know, compromised, done away with? Who will it consume politically?
The fires of that pact have already started consuming certain people, and some of them already burnt halfway. We only expect that in the coming days, as we stoke the fire even more, Some of them are going to be consumed fully. But it is also going to be a big harvest for some people. Let me start by saying this, Sam, so that we don't confuse Kenyans.
Yep.
The fact alone, as I've said before, the fact alone of a handshake between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga does not solve the socio-political, economic challenges of this country right away, okay? It's just a signal of the beginning to try and address some of those things which the opposition thinks government should address together. It does not mean that the full aspiration of those who supported the opposition thus far is going to be realized. Because that can only be realized if Raila Odinga would have ascended to the presidency. So let us know very key things here. The first thing is that it's a good thing that Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga are talking, because then that gives this country a sense of healing, a sense of a new beginning, from which platform Kenyans can now begin addressing the challenges that they have. However, that having been said, let us also know that this is serious political chess that we are witnessing. And some of these pacts that are entered into do not necessarily serve the long-term reason for which they were entered into. They could be entered into for the meantime, because probably there is no way out of the process. So I want to imagine that the two leaders need to craft a team which is going to work on their shared values and then practically understand that, you know, the government as is already is probably may not change much just by the fact that Raila Odinga has come on board and they're having a conversation. And I also see this, to be honest, Sam, as an exit strategy for Raila Amolo Odinga. I think he feels that he has fought enough, and he feels that there is that possibility that if he doesn't stop at some point, then he is going to destroy everything that he has built, including this country, all over the years. So he is saying, surely, there is an act of parliament that is called the Deputy President and other state officers remuneration retirement act. If I stopped fighting and then become a retired prime minister, you know, I am going to get a huge office with a clear program in which I can actually take up some issue and run with it. There are those who are already saying from his camp that he's going to be the peacemaker. You know, the former President Daniel Arap Moi is tasked with educational issues, and then the former President Mwai Kibaki is running away with water issues. So Raila Odinga is saying, let me also take up one of these matters and play a statesman's role in this country, as opposed to going down as this quintessential fighter who never saw a war that he didn't want to join. And let, for whatever that might happen, let that be the place that I'm going to leave Kenya at. Now, I see, you know, there's this quiet guy who has been making complimentary statements over the weekend called William Ruto. Right about now, I see Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga as the biggest beneficiaries of the pact that they have entered into. But into the future, eventually
yes,
in 2022, in the succession debate, the biggest beneficiary as we speak today, with or without the liking of these two gentlemen, is one William Arap Samoei Ruto. And I can tell you the reason why. You know, by this pact, there are a number of people who have been totally annihilated, you know, who could have been the competitors against William Ruto in 2022. Never even mention the fact that there is a possibility that Raila Amolo Odinga is now retiring. Because if he had run in 2022, then whatever would have happened, the two horses in 2022 would definitely have been Raila Odinga and William Ruto. Okay? So whereas William Ruto should not hang up his jacket and start high-fiving people and start jumping into the swimming pool, what he needs to do now is look at these unfolding events very closely. And I know he's one of the master players in this game. And he's going to emerge something really formidable. And I'm sure that the whole question of William Ruto looking like he didn't know what was happening is just that. Looking like he didn't know what was happening.
As scripted as it can get.
And just,
I can tell you.
And just to pick onto that, the script continues to unfold. Remember that if we're looking at 2022, already the script from the selection of cabinet was that William Ruto had little say unto the selection. So already the failure or potential failure of this cabinet is being removed from his cup of tea come 2022. So just to build on to the script that Mamboleo says is unfolding, you can clearly see that definitely there is some script that you need to watch carefully, because if it continues in a certain direction, it's definitely going to emerge as one of the strong factors come 2022 as we look at the incoming president.
Lessons for Kenyans.
Yes.
And I'm very deliberate in saying, in phrasing that question that way. Lessons for Kenyans. What is the take home for the 45 million of us from this situation?
That we must talk. We must give room and opportunity for people to talk. We have been saying it. We have been saying it for over a year now, that there's need for dialogue. There's a kind of, sometimes I think it's in the mind. Even the traffic over the weekend looked different, you know. you feel that there's a different air in the country, like there's a different kind of anticipation. We are still wary as Kenyans, because if our agenda is lost in political gainsay by the politicians, then we will still go back to where we are. But there is that potential that we may just be able to resolve these issues with, as Mamboleo has stated, two leaders who are potentially looking at retirement. And the only thing that they want is a better Kenya for us. So all the people who have interests are left out to continue to talk about their interests and continue to strategize for their 2022. But for the two leaders who actually want to leave a better nation, they're coming together. And here's our opportunity to ensure that we bring those talks to the table realistically, because there's got to be some give and take both sides as we push the agenda forward. Because there are those people who feel that the softer issues, for example, reform, may not be number one in the agenda, and would like to see systematic development agendas come to the table that are not prone to corruption or to mismanagement. There are those who would be interested in that. There are those who would be interested in other things, of seeing how do we ensure that, for example, the audit report that was conducted that said we have too many institutions, too many that we don't need, how are they going to be merged so that we have a better working nation, even at that level. So lesson for Kenyans is that when you get an opportunity to talk, you must talk, and you must remain focused on that agenda.
Right.
Because if we don't remain focused on the agenda, we are going to lose this opportunity. And 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line, it's just going to be another handshake like we had in 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, with Honorable Mwai Kibaki and His Excellency Raila Molo shaking hands. It's going to be the same thing again. So if we don't remain focused in ensuring that this handshake translates into something meaningful, then we lose it. If we remain focused on looking at the political intrigues, yet the two leaders have carefully crafted the pact in such a manner that those intrigues are outside the table, then I think we are going to still find ourselves in a mess.
Adan Kenan, you're finally getting my attention very well, because earlier on, sometime I think last year, he sponsored a bill. Was it last year or the year before? Okay. Sometime you sponsored a bill in relation to what's in a title, right? And even on this set, I've heard you call Raila Molo Odinga His Excellency. You've done the same. There was that statement that was circulating, the 8-page document that referred to Raila as His Excellency, put around 15 times. What's in a title, Mamboleo?
everything. There is everything in a title.
Yes.
And in politics, titles really do matter. That's why some people are referred to as their excellencies. Others have no title.
Right honorable.
Others could be right honorable, and so on and so forth. Others could be just honorable, even if in most cases they're not so honorable, by the way. So there's something that really concerns me, which is the lesson that, you know, even from the pact that we saw crafted by the two gentlemen, there's a possibility that most of our Kenyans, most of the citizens of this country have missed the actual underpinning of that particular pact. They think that this is just a coming together of Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta for a reason probably which exists only in their mind. I want to say that, you know, that pact reminds Kenyans that the dream of our founders is probably still alive during our time. That there is a possibility that we can now go forward saying that Kenya is not lost, because most importantly, Kenyans can even actually sit down and have a discussion and agree to stop the gaps that separate them and work together in common unity. You heard, for instance, the president has added onto his 4-item agenda a 5th agenda, which is national unity.
Yes.
So I think from that point, it's a very positive thing, because what is the most important thing for Kenyans? Sam, the most important thing for Kenyans is this: to be able to live in good conditions of life, to be able to afford healthcare, to be able to have good quality food, to be able to live in good houses with access, with proper amenities like water and so on and so forth. For their children to go to school, and good schools for that matter, to get good quality education. For them to be able to find work when they are out of school, so as to be able to earn a livelihood instead of having to depend on breadcrumbs that are offered by politicians. You see, the only way we can achieve this is by entertaining a government or a country in which hard work is promoted by an enabling environment created by government. So that we have a government that has its focus on the important things that will move this country forward. You know, as I've told you many times, 80% of the rural population in this country is employed directly in agriculture. So you cannot move a majority of Kenyans forward without investing in serious interventions in agriculture, financial intermediation, create employment for crying out loud, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. What I need Kenyans to learn is that whilst Kenya has that big potential that we can always move forward, I think a lot of Kenyans, some, don't have sufficient information on which to make political choices. That is why you see Kenyans going at each other the way they do, okay? Even when they are led by their leaders, they still do not know everything that their leaders are up to. They do not know exactly what drives their leaders. So that all it needs is for their leader to turn this way, and Kenyans will turn all of them that way, you know? They will not ask, why are we now turning this way, when we said all along that we were going this way. Let us sensitize Kenyans to start knowing that politics, to some extent, is also a game. It's a contest, just like football. You can make predictions. I know a lot of Kenyans, for instance, bet on sport pesa, and they lose many times.
A good one.
In fact, in most cases, they lose more than they gain. So let them understand that some of these things are not so clear as to be able to make a finalistic statement on political questions. Let them allow themselves some room to break when they see that their leaders are hurtling towards self-destruction. Because all it needs is for these leaders to just turn back, and Kenyans, you know, for instance, Kenyans don't know what to think right now. Most of them are still beginning to understand what is happening. You see processing. Now, this pact is going to be the question of analysis for days. We are going to ask ourselves who benefits, who has lost, and so on and so forth. All it needed was for these two gentlemen to even come and say, we agreed to work together, there is no pact. This is it. So I think Kenyans should strive to continue getting more civic education on issues that affect them. But most importantly, Kenyans as a whole need to start engaging their leaders a bit more comprehensively, a bit more, more practically, and say, where you are taking us, you say you are taking us there. How are you taking us there? And what if we don't get there? What is going to happen? Because at this point, believe me, you some, even the 4 agendas of the president are just an aspiration. Unless the correct structures are put in place, all right, this is not going to happen. And I want the president to go back and borrow a leaf from former President Mwai Kibaki, how he turned a country that was growing at negative digits economy-wise into a country that was growing at 7% of GDP, you know, because of creating good policy, putting the right personnel in place, and making sure that you create all these things and they go along. That's how we got Vision 2030 from the ERSP of 2003. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much noise we make. These practical interventions that government makes in certain areas is what will give us what we expect from government. If we think that by just Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga coming together and speaking, that is it, that's not going to happen. And then it's also going to teach, as my sister said, institutions. What if today Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta now agree that, you know, the problem is the IEBC, okay? Then they will send Chilobei home. And then they will send Chebukati home, okay? So unless you want to work in Juakali like me, where you, where you can do anything and get away with it, make sure that anytime you are charged with a public responsibility, you cut straight, not left, not right. Because what will happen is the same people that were serious antagonists yesterday will become the greatest friends. Don't get surprised that in the days to come, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga are going to be referring to each other as my friend, my brother. They're already doing it. They're doing that already. And then you are on this side fighting so hard against that side. And then because that has already come out, people will say, no, you are too hardliner. You cannot join the new thinking. We need people who are a bit more open-minded. So Kenyans need to be careful on how to, it is okay to take a political position, but what you do with that political position is important. Don't kill people. Don't kill yourself. Don't allow yourself to be led as if you do not have a brain. Allow yourself some room to reason, even when all these things happen. Because when the chips are down, you'll be left high and dry if you did not take the correct position. Final word, Milly.
I think that it's a good thing that we have been given yet another opportunity as Kenyans to deal with this almost blank check. Because I think just a few details have been filled in that check, but we have a largely blank check that we can be able to guide the journey, our development journey with. I am really hoping that civil society will wake up and take this as an opportunity for them to come out a little bit more boldly, a little bit more strongly, knowing that Raila, who has been a strong supporter of civic space, is now in the house with Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, so that then they would be able to ensure that the people's interests are protected in that agenda. I hope that they're already making inroads as the teams that will be represented in the secretariat that is yet to be established are going to be established, so that they will ensure that the people's interests are protected there. This is an opportunity for them to finally go back to the kind of civil society that we anticipate as a nation. For the politicians, we are watching, and I think this is popcorn time, for us to see, yes, the careers that will be built and the ones that are going to say bye-bye. Yeah.
Quite an interesting time to be a Kenyan. I'm glad I'm living under these times. And we're learning a lot.
We are.
Enzi zetu tutakuwa wahenga, I'm telling you, 30 years from now. Hey, we'll sit you down and give you stories. Yes. But thank you so much for coming to the show this morning. And thank you for contributing to that much needed discussion in as far as the pact is concerned. And speaking of the pact, we need to just take home two things. One, it's not an event, it is a process. There's got to be a lot of, deliberate moves made to ensure that this country heals and moves on and forward in the right way. And in the same breath, it's not a question of show and statements. It is actually real work, okay? When it comes to building a nation, you and I are quite literally involved. So let's take up our positions and our roles and make sure that we create a nation that we can sit back one day and be proud of. Remember, as much as we've inherited it from our forefathers, we've also borrowed it from our children. So we've got a sense of responsibility. Therein, Johnson Sakaja, yeah, I see where you're coming from. It's Tibim, Tano Tena, officially. And yani, waliokuwa naenda Canaan, tulizunguka hivi vyote, mlizunguka hivi vyote.
Mufika.
Na Canaan ilikuwa tu hapa Harambee House. Ilikuwa tu hapa tu. But that's on a lighter note. Thank you for watching this show. Safina Cheng is coming up next with Family Check and a very interesting discussion. What's in a marriage? Okay? And especially the loopholes or what we call in law, lacuna. Okay? What usually makes a marriage not flourish? And I'm avoiding using the word work because marriage is not a hassle. It's meant to be enjoyed. So she comes up next. Enjoy the show. And this is Good Morning Kenya, the only way to start your day. Thanks for keeping us company this far.